Hello, and welcome to the Telestrations Roundtable. I'm Ross Thompson, a marketing manager at the op, and I'm joined by the design team and the creators of Telestrations and Telestrations Upside Drawn. Let's start out with Kane. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Kane Klenko. I am the designer of Telestrations Upside Drawn.
Awesome. Pat?
I'm Pat Marino, the game design manager at the op.
Tony?
Hi, Tony Serebriany. I am the Director of Inventor Relations and International Sales at the op.
And Cami?
Hi, I'm Cami, and I do game design here at the op.
That's great. Thank you all for joining us today for this roundtable discussion. I know we're all at home on our own different schedules, but it's fun that we get the chance to talk about Upside Drawn. It's going to be really fun. I'm excited to learn more about it. So, Kane, can you tell us about Upside Drawn and what kind of game it is?
Upside Drawn, it's a party game, obviously put into the Telestrations line. It is a game for 4 to 12 players, and it's played in teams of 2 to 3 players each. Players are drawing, but in a new and unique twist on the whole thing. So the way it works, it's hard to do without a visual.
All right, it's all good. Yeah, we'll talk about it more too. It's all good.
Yeah. So each team, one player is the drawer, and the other person knows the word. So they're trying to get their teammate to guess the word by holding. One player holds a pen, and the other player is going to hold down on the table, right, the board, and they're going to be moving the board around. So the player that's actually drawing the picture doesn't know what the word is, and they're trying to guess what it is. Word or a phrase. So multiple teams playing all at once, you're racing against the other teams trying to guess the word. That was kind of a roundabout way to get there, but that's how you play.
No, it totally makes sense. It's a blast to play. Back when we were in the office a couple months ago, we had that one lunch where Brett and I were on a team, and it was a super fun time. So, Tony, tell us how this came to be in the line for Telestrations.
So one of the great things about my job is I get to literally travel around the world and meet game designers such as Kane, and they pitch me different game ideas. And oftentimes I'm being pitched games that are not at all related to anything that we already have in our line, with the hopes that they're pitching us the next great game. Well, when Kane pitched this game, it was very clear that it was a natural fit within the Telestrations family, because you're still guessing and drawing and drawing and guessing. It's just with this unique twist on it, it makes it actually a much more competitive way to play the game, and therefore even more fun. The core mechanic of Telestrations is so much fun and pure joy in and of itself. To add this new wrinkle and this new twist takes it to a whole new level. So we were at a convention, and we had a meeting outside where we could actually hear each other off the show floor. And he pitched it to me, and he'd been playtesting it for, I don't know, Kane, you said probably months at that point.
Yeah, when we met in person, I'm not sure if you even remember this, but I actually sent you a message before that.
Yeah.
The day that I had the idea, which is probably a really bad idea for a designer. Yeah, we can get into that later, but yeah, I sent you a message saying, I think this will fit the op, and then we ended up meeting at Gen Con, after I had played it for a few months.
Yeah. And I think the beautiful thing about you reaching out early is, as a game designer, you go through so many different iterations of so many different games that when you do have a unique idea that you think fits very particularly to a specific publisher, or even in this case, a specific brand, you had enough wherewithal to know that it's sound in concept. So if in practice it actually works, there could be a good fit here. So I think your outreach, although you said maybe was not the best way to go, I think you planted the seed so that by the time we actually met and you showed it, it was like the light bulb had already gone off. It's like, okay, I get it. Yes, we need to play test this and give it a shot.
Well, that was the hope, and it worked, apparently. So
It did. So, Cami and Pat, what were your first thoughts when the game came back to the op?
So I remember the first prototype coming in, and it was like the dry erase boards from some kind of like kids activity kit or something, and kind of looking at it, yeah, and looking at it and going, what is this going to be, right? You know, is this going to be a thing? Because we see all kinds of prototypes come through, and I don't think Tony had mentioned that it was a design that Kane had done. So I was kind of coming into this blind of like, okay, this could be coming from anywhere with any concept. And then as soon as we played it, it was like, oh, this is a game. Like, we need this in the line. It was very clear very quickly, you know, that this was something we were going to pursue. And I think for me, what it kind of did was it took the fun of Telestrations and kind of hyped it up. You know, when you're playing Telestrations and everybody's kind of independently drawing, you have that moment where you're kind of giggling to yourself about your picture and waiting to pass it. But there's some added tension in this game where everyone's like frantically trying to guess rather than like, okay, you've got a timer in Telestrations. I think a lot of people don't use it because it's more fun to like really get into the drawing. But in this one, it's a race, right? And so that element for me really added something to the experience that was like, oh, this is really fresh because it's frantic and funny at the same time. So I really enjoy that about it.
And Cammie?
I love that it have level, because the person holding the pen just holds it really still. The person who's doing the drawing is actually the person with the player board. It can't control that well enough. So all the guessing and everything else that comes about, everything is so hilarious because nothing is correct. Nothing makes sense. And then there's the whole thing, oh, you were drawing that to face you instead of me. And suddenly it all makes sense. And you're putting the pictures together, but you're hearing everybody laughing and talking around you. And it's noisy and it's fun. And it just brings so much hilarity to the table because of how mixed up it is.
So it is really crazy in like a super fun way. The first time I played it, it had, I think it was the bee boards. Was that what was on it, right? It had the bees, which was, so I was playing with Katie and the sales team. And I like you can tell with certain people in the office, like when they are vibing on a prototype, like it's going to be a good hit. And the sales team was all about it. And I was just like this. I actively tried to get Tony to play a couple more times with us when we were doing all those rounds because it was such a lot of fun. And I'm glad that we could make that happen. So during playtesting, what were you looking for in the game, Kane? Like, was there certain things you wanted to capture to help kind of get that feel?
Yeah, if people know my games, Pat mentioned tension in a fun way. If people know my games, that's what I'm looking for. And in this case, being a party game, bringing even more of just silly fun to it, but still having that slight bit of tension where instead of like games like Fuse and things like that, where you're up against a timer, here it's a race. You're up against other players and you can feel the tension in the other players. And then also you can see what they're doing. And yeah, it was kind of bring the whole table together as a race, but to keep that tension and fun up.
Which is good. Yeah, Tony, what are your thoughts on that?
So I think maybe to clarify for those listening, one of the pieces of the game is that the active player on a team gets to look at the phrase or the item on the card and then passes that same card to the active player on all the other teams so that everyone is drawing the same exact thing. And so the tension comes from everybody's trying to get there first and you're listening to other people's guesses and you're using that to your advantage while also trying to not vocalize too loud what you're doing because you don't want the other team to do the same from you. So I think the idea with tension and playful tension is really good. And I think, you know, the core essence of Telestrations is truly more about the magic of miscommunication more than it is about tension of a game. Whereas this, it takes miscommunication and puts a tension parameter on it in such a playful way. And as Kane said, it's 4 to 12, so you can have teams of 2 or 3. So we did play test in teams of 2 and 3. And what's unique about changing it up with a third player on the team is you have one person controlling the board, one person going up and down with the pen, one directed, and then the third player can focus literally only on guessing. while the person holding the pen can also guess. But what we found is the tension becomes so serious about up, down, you lose concentration on trying to guess because the other person's guessing. So the tension even amongst the team members itself even can change unexpectedly, and that adds to the fun.
That's great. Pat and Cammie, any thoughts on that?
Well, I would say like one of the pieces I love in games that have tension is the payoff, right? Of like when whatever happens that we're kind of building to. And in a party game, it's all about that reveal moment. So when one of the teams guesses, it's not just that the round ended and they score the points. It's that you have this moment because every team was drawing the same thing where everybody holds up their boards, and it's like, okay, the keyword was giraffe, right? And it's like, when you're trying to draw a giraffe using this system and you're trying to do it really fast,
and upside down,
the things you end up with are just like totally ridiculous. And it's like, you hear a team guessing like all kinds of dinosaur names, and some other team is guessing like cartoon characters, and then somebody finally screams it out, and you look at all the boards and you go, what on earth, have you ever seen a giraffe? And especially when you get into the phrases, which are really the hardest ones, I think, in the game. It's sort of like the level of detail that people try to put into communicating a phrase is just really funny, because you end up with like 6 or 7 different mini drawings trying to get the point across. And then as soon as a team says it, you're like, oh, of course that's what it was. But then when you really break it down, it's like, what was this collection of drawings here? Yeah.
And there's a lot of discussion afterwards, which I think you were saying, where you want to see everyone's board. It's not just, okay, let's move on. You want to discuss and see what everyone drew and how they got there.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and as Pat's saying, the hardest ones by far to draw are those phrases. I mean, it's the one everybody's like, oh no, we have to draw a phrase, and you dread it going into it. But those are the best ones to play through because they are so funny, and to see everybody's drawing and to watch it not come to life, because honestly, they take so long, because you're sitting there and you're like, how hard is it to guess somewhere over the rainbow? I've got a rainbow here. It's obviously going to be this. And everybody's, guessing things about unicorns and clouds and sky. And you're like, it's somewhere over the rainbow, and you're making big loopy gestures with the board. And you're like, no, got to keep it on the table. I got to keep it low, calm down. And it's so funny.
It's funny you brought that up. When we played at Gamma on Board Game Geek, and it was, I think Horizon was the word, but we could not get there. It kept being island or sunset or all these different. It was
ocean and beach, and it's funny when like people get really, the guessers get stuck on that idea, right? And it's like there's only so much I can do to draw a horizon, and if they're not there, it's like, now what do I do? How do I like just I think I got to the point I just like had them drawing the line back and forth,
that's what you ended up doing, was you were just to make it happen, right? And so that was good. It's
hard with words like horizon, but that's where the sidebar came in with the clues that you can give. So if you're not getting there in one way, I added those so you can try and get there another way. Sometimes you have to go the long way to get to your answer, but.
Right. So were those always on the intention in the game, or how did that evolve into?
I was looking through my notes. Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
I was looking through my notes, and so I had the idea, which I'll get to. Played it with my wife and kids that night. Sent Toady a message immediately, and then 3 days later was actually a convention that weekend. So that's where I was able to get a big group together right away. And I didn't have them in there at that point, but I think by the end of that night, I had added some different clues that they could give, especially for the phrases, because like Cammie was saying, they're the best, but they can go on a couple minutes. And so I was like, okay, you have to have a way to give some clues here. So.
Yeah.
Right. So along with that, so how did you come up with the idea for Upside Down?
Yeah. So I wasn't thinking, I'm always thinking about game design. I've always got something going, but I was at work in the mortgage industry, completely aside from games, and I needed someone to sign a document. She was eating lunch at her desk, and she had a sandwich in her hand, and I needed her signature. And I said, just hold the pen and I'll move the paper, just as a joke. And then I literally said, hang on a second. I went back to my desk, typed up a bunch of notes, and like,
wow.
That is awesome.
That was it. It was like that, and 90% of the game was done.
Oh, that is so good.
That's great.
A real life situation triggered it. That's great.
Yeah. So is check or mortgage or any of that one of the clues in the?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's all good. So, so Tony,
Yes.
how did Telestrations come to be?
First and foremost, through a lot of laughter. So we had a former colleague whose big group of college friends, actually high school and in the college friends, used to get together and watch movies, and then they would all write reviews of them. Another thing they would do is play a lot of games together. So at one of their friends' birthdays, a couple of them gave new games as gifts, and they were hoping that, of course, those games would make it to the table to play. And instead, one of the friends who'd been off at college had played this game, which became Telestrations on pen and paper, but in a slightly different way. And so Derek said that they had played this game from like 9 p.m. until 5 a.m. and they just laughed and laughed and laughed. So he just thought he would share it with us because he thought we would enjoy it. So this was, oh my gosh, this was probably back in 07 or 08.
Yeah.
And so we were meeting as a regular group to evaluate some competitive product as well as some inventor submissions. And we took a break to play this game, and it was instantaneous. The light bulb that was going off in my head and my colleague's head, Heather, about, oh my gosh, there's something here, this could be our next great game. And the parameters that we had at the time were that we were using, essentially little notepads of paper, just scrap paper cut into squares, and creating a stack of paper based on the number of people playing. And you were using a ballpoint pen so that anything you did had to remain in the image. And we came up with sort of guardrails. So the guardrails were like, okay, this round we're going to do a movie title. Next round we did a book title. Next round we did somebody famous. And it was like after that very first time we played and the first pass, when you saw what was about to happen around the table, literally the laughter and the comments that was coming out of everyone's mouth was like, oh no, or oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, or I can't believe that I have to draw this, or what the heck am I looking at? And then once we completed the circle and everybody had their package, if you will, of drawings and guesses back, we would go through one at a time and reveal them all. And then all the laughter continuously ensuing. Because it was built off of just pure joy and laughter, I can't tell you how many people opened the conference room door those couple of weeks that we were initially playtesting this game, wondering what the heck was going on, because we were clearly having too much fun to call it work. And so every time somebody new would come in, we'd invite them to play. And it was literally probably a matter of about 2 or 3 playtests where we had an initial prototype design that we could pitch internally to say, we want to make this game and we want to start working on it like wholeheartedly and move fast. And once we got the blessing to put some time and energy behind it, it took us about a good year plus to really get it to where we felt like we could actually put it on a shelf, because we didn't want to sell a box full of paper that people were going to throw away or recycle. So we came up with a unique way to display it like you're going through a book, like a sketchbook. So the dry erase and the spiral bound books. Yes, of course, there is some fun to be able to put a whole story on your refrigerator or your office wall. But the beautiful thing is we all have these little digital devices in our pockets now. So you can take a picture or even make a little GIF out of your drawings and such to commemorate the experience. So after we put the game all together and debuted it, it wasn't too long after that that we started realizing that we wanted the box to work harder for us. So within the first year, we even went back to the drawing board and redesigned the packaging and updated the graphics to make it a little more fun and playful. And that's essentially what you see on the store shelves now. And it was literally countless hours of playtesting and word refining of the list. We had down the hallway at our old office, we had these giant Post-its down the hallway, And we were encouraging everybody as they walked through the hallway to stop and jot new suggestions of words down that we would then play test and try and bubble some up and scratch some off the list. And you know, it's a continuously refining process, as Kane probably knows after going through Upside Drawn. Some stuff works really well. Some other stuff is just a train wreck right from the start. And what we wanted for Telestrations was we wanted some of those words to be able to make it all the way through, because for a game about communication, which actually becomes about miscommunication, it's like those little wins when you actually have a word that either makes it all the way around or breaks somewhere in the middle, but then comes all the way back. Even if it's something simple like spoon or broken heart, even those things can go awry. But when everything's been going awry and then something comes back around, the celebration and the high fives that happen, even though that's not necessarily the joy of the game, it's just those little wins that are really special. So for Upside Drawn, I think it's really exciting because now we're actually pushing the limit of what we can communicate through drawing. And, you know, as Pat was talking about with Horizon, or even some of the phrases like a dime a dozen, that it just pushes your limits as to how quickly and how simply you can communicate an idea with somebody else as opposed to all yourself. So it's quite a fun experience to see the game and the essence of this game continuously evolve.
Yeah, that's right. That was great, Tony.
So early on too, let me also backtrack. Because this was a brand new title for us, and we had at the time been primarily known as the licensee of Hasbro that was doing licensed versions of Monopoly, Yahtzee, Jenga, and Clue, this was a big deal for us to launch a game that was completely unrelated to all of that. So it took us quite a long time for us to really feel comfortable with continuously supporting the game because it was so unique and it didn't have a brand like Monopoly or an IP like Game of Thrones to stand on. But the beautiful thing about the game is because when you play it is so contagious and you want to make it your own that you go naturally share it, that it was like 2 or 3 years of consumer trade shows back to back, you know, Origins and Gen Con and ShyTag, Origins, Gen Con and ShyTag, of playing this with hundreds and hundreds of people, that the groundswell began to go. And then we made an investment with our team to do sort of a play it forward campaign where we allowed everybody on the team to ship a game to 5 of their families and friends around the country to help, you know, really launch the product. And, you know, that grassroots effort is really what helped it grab a hold. And then our constant support of it, as well as the nature of play, have really helped it become the staple that it is in our product line, to the point where we can come out with a line extension like Upside Drawn.
So that was great, and I love that we're able to do that now. We've been doing Telestrations for about 10 years now, right? And it's over a huge number of languages. I think we've 1 million+ copies have been sold.
Higher than that, close to 3 million copies worldwide.
Is it close to 3 now? Look at that. That is incredible. So, and now we're bringing it in with Upside Drawn, which is great. It's funny. I have a quick Telestration story of, that's one of the games we used to play at my college game night. Even before I worked, like at the Opera, even worked in games, was we would do Telestrations. And that was like our go-to game. So it was really fun when I applied at the Op, you know, forever ago. I was just like, hey, oh my gosh, this is the company that makes that game. It's fun that we get to do that. And now bringing in Upside Drawn, it's cool that I think what Tony, you're saying on the pushing communication and seeing how people interact. So kind of an open question for everyone here. What are you looking forward to when people start playing this game? Like, what are you hoping they get to experience? Kane?
Probably a generic answer, but just fun. I mean, it's a party game. It's silly, but I feel like it works with gamers and non-gamers, which I've pulled it out at conventions with gamers. I've pulled it out with family and at groups where no one there played any games and had no interest in playing a game. And were kind of annoyed, I think, that a game was coming out. And then they sit there and they literally play for 5 hours straight.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's just the excitement and coming out of this whole lockdown eventually, hopefully, bringing people back together at the table. It's a great great game to get together with friends and family.
Yeah, Cammie?
I'm looking forward to seeing people's pictures because my favorite part of Telestrations is always going, somebody will post something on Facebook or Twitter and you're like, wait, let me see if I can decipher that. And suddenly you're like, oh, I do see how that is a dime a dozen or Horizon. And I love looking at people's drawings. And I think this game naturally has that moment where people are going to want to take pictures and share it with all their friends. So I love that social response that it's going to garner.
Pat?
I think for me, like one of the reasons I like this one and Telestrations as well is it's like, Tony talked about the groundswell and wanting to share it with people. And I think that comes from this idea that like, you can't do a bad job, right? In playing this game, like some drawing games, it's like, you know, if you're playing with an artist and they nail it every time, and then you get up there to kind of make a crude drawing and everybody's like, I have no idea what that is. Like if that happens in Telestrations, it's just funny, right? Like the thing goes off the rails and everybody has a good laugh. And in this game, because it's a race, like it's a quick round. But what I love is Tony talked about that moment where you like look at what you have to draw and everybody kind of goes, oh no, right? And in Telestrations, it's like, okay, well, we already know this is going to go badly and I'm already laughing. And in Upside Drawn, it adds to that of like, oh no, but also here, other team, we're in this together. You know, so there's that moment where even if you're just picking randomly off the card, you're like, well, I'm going to pick the hard one. Because it's hard for me, but I get to drag everyone else into this with me to have this really challenging thing to draw. And that creates those really like memorable moments of laughter and stuff that people want to share, right? Like Gamma was, you know, months ago now, and we've had plenty happen in the world since then. And Ross and I both still remember that the word was Horizon and exactly what happened in that round. And I think that's the kind of memories that people are going to walk away with when they play this game.
Yeah.
Tony?
So I think everything that's been said is definitely something I'm looking forward to, but I think the sharing of the game with people who are either not gamers or not interested in playing this kind of game, and just hearing those stories, because as Kane just eloquently described, is sometimes people would be annoyed that a game is coming out, but then they're the ones that are wanting to continuously play because they didn't expect to be having fun and now they're having the most fun. So I'm really looking forward to hearing how this game opens that door for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I know you kind of just said like it's a generic answer of fun, but Telestrations Upside Drawn, it really is fun. Like the minute we were like, hey, we're going to have this show, that was one of the games that I've been looking forward to most for promoting this year. It's a little difficult right now, obviously, because we're all in our different zones and for quarantine and whatnot. But I love that game. It is a blast getting together and doing all of that. I've been chatting with my game group, and I'm like, hey, by the way, like once we can gather, like we've got party games, like we've got some hobby games, sure, but like there's gonna be some hobby, like some hard like party games going down. I hope you guys are ready, and which is going to be a lot of fun. It's funny.
This game actually, real quick, Ross, this game actually can work in this kind of environment as long as there's a team of 2 or 3 on each end. So like I could be the active player and Ross could be the active player, and I text him what the phrase or the word is. And so he and I both know, and then we play locally and we keep our speakers on. And when somebody gets it and gets awarded the points.
That sounds good. And we should do that.
Yeah, it's still doable.
Okay.
And as long as you've got another camera maybe in some setups so you can actually see the drawing too, that could be really fun.
I'd love to do that. Let's do it. That sounds great. Let's make that happen.
Cool.
That'll be cool. So it's interesting. So Cammie, you brought up social media.
Yes.
And how the game gets shared. And I will always Josh on Tony for how many times he has photos of Telestrations things shared on his camera. Like, and you have your favorite ones. I remember PAX Unplugged 2 years ago. We were playing with that family at the show, and the little girl had done this drawing. You were like, hold on, I got to get a photo. And you're like, you stood there and took a photo of the whole board that went down. But what's interesting is this is something that we're all going to have to get used to. And like TikTok has been huge for Telestrations.
Amazing.
It's been incredible. And of course it makes sense because of the flip and that. And I think with Upside Drawn, it'll do the same thing where we all try to figure out what is being guessed and the words that are being yelled out. but I think last time I looked, there was like 5 to 6 million views across the board on the hashtag for Telestrations, just for the different stuff there. So I think as we're looking forward with new social media, I know we all say Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, but I think that little brief moments that we're going to get with TikTok is going to be pretty cool. I've been making the leap kind of just for the game stuff, but through those kind of games, we're going to be able to experience a lot of that stuff. So along with that, with Upside Drawn, are there any fun like playtest stories, Kane, that you want to share from as you're going through?
Yeah, I think going back to the draft story and everyone's yelling out dinosaur names, it's just kind of that sort of thing where once someone hears something from another team, it kind of changes their focus and everyone is kind of along the same line. Like we had slippers as a word, and it's hard to draw a slipper apparently. So people are trying all different things, drawing a moon. And so one person just kept repeatedly yelling night socks. Like that had to be the right answer. There's no way it couldn't be night socks. They just kept yelling that. So
night socks. That's
night socks. Yeah.
That's a new one. Man.
Hysterical.
Pat and Cammie, any stories from that?
What comes to mind is kind of funny is like as we were testing content, right? And we talked about having to kind of culminate and cultivate the list of what words and phrases and things are going to go on the cards. And we had a couple along the way that it was like, okay, this should be hard. And then, somebody would do it in like 2 lines and you're just like, oh, so like, I think we had the category place, right? And the clue was church. And it was like, okay, the teams were ready to go. And one team starts drawing a whole building and the other team just did a cross. And the guesser was like, okay, cross, place, church. And we went, oh, right. Like sometimes people just think in this different frame of mind that it's like, you only need the most minimal thing. And if you get it right, you get it right. But if you miss it, then it's like, now what? If that's your whole focus of, I was going to draw this thing, my team was going to guess it in 10 seconds. And then it turns into, they have no idea. And they're saying hospital because they think that cross is like the plus on a hospital. And now I'm trying to figure out how do I backtrack and give them the right imagery. Right. And so some of those moments were interesting to see just how different players like processed what the clue was and tried to make meaning of it on the board. And then how sometimes their teams hit it right away. And other times they were just like totally on different pages and weren't coming to that common point, which was really funny to watch.
I think it helped us also to refine the icons that are on the side of the board. I know, Kane, when you gave it to us, I think there were probably 5 icons. And we ended up with, I think, 10 different things. Like we ended up with a hot and cold because we got to the point where it's like, okay, you are right there. You've got this answer. You're saying all the words, but you're not putting it together right or whatever. And then the cold for the cross and the hospital. It's like, no, it's not. It's a church. You are so cold with this hospital guess, but it's the right drawing to get you there. You're not thinking about it the right way. And so part of playtesting is also trying to figure out what is the best way to communicate to and help people to refine their guesses. And so those icons on the side really were a lot of what we wanted to try and make sure resonated with the people as they were playing and they were useful.
Tony, any thoughts when you first brought it in?
I'd say on the playtesting level, just the confusion by which the active player is controlling the board and drawing it so it's upright for them versus upright for the player who has to guess. Because it's a completely different drawing at that point, right? Because you're looking at it from a different perspective. And just the communication that happens in the room upon the reveal, just because of that alone. And I think that is the sort of the team dynamic that has to get worked out is when I'm drawing, I'm going to draw it so you can see it upright. But when you're drawing, you're going to only draw it so you can see it upright. So I got to keep that in mind. So it's just, and then comparing drawings for the same thing when people are drawing reversed, the drawings can kind of look similar, but because they were upside down where they ask them to flip the board over, like, oh yeah, now that is not at all what I was guessing. So.
Yeah, there's been more than a few games, especially like playing with Katie from Sales, where like halfway through, she'll just spin the whole board around because she's realized she's drawing from her perspective and not for the, and you're guessing things that like kind of make sense if it's the right way up for you. But then as soon as she flips it, it's like, Oh, that's what that was. Yeah, those are castle towers, not stalactites coming down in a cave. Got it. Okay, yeah.
That's great. So so we've got Telestrations for a regular game. There's a 6-player version, an 8-player version, a 12-player party pack. There's an After Dark version, which glows in the dark and comes with coasters. And then we have Upside Drawn, which is coming out and it's available now, which is super exciting. It's a good time, I think, for Telestrations as a party game where now we can kind of experience all these cool things and create memories and create laughs and all these different moments for gamers and for just regular families. I think it's one of the cool things that we kind of talked about a lot in this one was that it's not just gamers that play this game. It definitely is families and it's friends, and it's kind of a game for everyone. Yeah, we're kind of getting up on our time here. I was kind of trying to figure out some more questions to ask. We kind of covered a lot on this boat. Is there anything else anybody wants to share from like different moments they have with Telestrations from the last?
Sure, I'll share some stuff.
Yeah.
So share a couple of things. So early on, as I mentioned, we did this Play It Forward campaign where we sent games out to a bunch of people and got feedback from them. And then we also did some outreach from a marketing level, and we did some fun stuff like, the Telestrations mug, Kleenex, because you're laughing so hard you got to wipe away your tears. We even thought about trying to make Mr. Telestrations or Mr. Sketchy into a little bendy guy.
Oh, I'm so glad you have that.
Yeah. So those were sort of fun explorations about how to try and sort of encapsulate the game in a tangible, physical sort of way. But as we were talking about how Upside Drawn can be for gamers and non-gamers, I think Telestrations as a whole is also. And when we launched it at ShyTag, it was clear that it was going to be a family game very easily because that's a very heavily family show. And then the following year when we brought it to Gen Con, we were a little nervous because that's a very heavy gamer crowd, but we were in the Family Fun Pavilion and we weren't really sure what to expect. So the first day of sales and playtesting was pretty soft and we were a little worried. But because of the beauty of what this game is and the nature of those shows is that one person who bought it went and played it with a whole bunch of people, and then a whole bunch more people would come back the next day to test it themselves or to buy a copy, and then that just sort of happened over the next several days. And I think that speaks to the testament of the game being able to fit into a whole different audience span. Somebody who's got a family ranging from 6 to 96 versus a group of gamer friends who want a little break between 2 heavy games, or something that a gamer knows that they can get their non-gamer friends or family members to play that they can gamify it. And I think Upside Drawn will help them gamify it. And then just a little fun tidbit, when we launched it in Chicago at ShyTag, I got the crazy idea to do a little grassroots PR marketing without telling anybody. And so I'm going to share my screen here really quick, if it'll let me.
I don't know if it will on record. Let's find out.
Let's try it out. Let's see. So
yep.
So,
oh my gosh.
So I went to a local barber and I said, I want to put our Mr. Sketchy dude, I wanted to put the whole guy on my head. And he's like, okay. And he's going, he's having fun. And I can't see it, of course, because he's behind me. He's like, I got some good news and I got some bad news. I'm like, oh no, I've just let him carve up my head and I'm going to leave tomorrow, right? And he's like, well, the good news is it looks really good. The bad news is that I can't fit the whole guy on your head. I'm like, what are you talking about? So this is what he came up with. And I'm like, oh, okay, this still works because he's still holding up the box or the paper, right? He's showing it off. I have people to this day still asking me what I'm going to carve in my head next because of that. So the next time I did it was for a big marketing campaign. Whoops, sorry. There we go. And so I got another guy to do it, and he got whole Mr. Sketchy on my head. So from a grassroots level perspective, this is a game that I truly love, and will go to all lengths to help support. And it's quite interesting that, as you were saying, Ross, people are sharing all sorts of stuff on TikTok and all over social media. I think the cool thing about this game is that when somebody discovers it, whether it's through a friend or just on their own, they embrace it like they're the ones who have found it and are sharing it with other people. And so some of the stuff you see on social media is just like that. And it's just so cool to see, because it's that kind of play experience that it can have that sort of pure joy reaction, pure fun reaction for people.
Yeah, which is just great. I love that we get to have this game to share and talk about, because it's really nice to have a game that isn't super crunchy and crazy. It's hey, we're the fun booth, right? We're going to be the ones that have this fun game and get to have this fun thing, whether it's in a wholesome way with that, or after dark, or which, man, we played that, I think, one of the last hangouts we did back in January. And I'm like, oh yeah, we'll just play this for an intro game, to get everything going. I've got a couple other games we can play. We ended up playing it for a couple hours,
awesome.
which was just good times. So I'm really excited that we get to have Upside Drawn coming out, and it's available now. Kane, thank you so much for joining us for this panel.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, very much so. And I look forward to when we could possibly meet again in person, whenever that is. I know a lot of the cons this year aren't going to be happening, but I'm glad that we get to do this, that we're sharing on the op for our digital space. So be sure to find out more about Upside Drawn and to find out more about the games from the op. You can follow us on the op.games on our website. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're all over on social media. This will be on YouTube as well, so you can find us there. We have a lot more coming out this year as well, which should be super cool. Pat, Cami, Tony, Kane, anything else? Any lasting words?
No, it's been great having everybody on here. Kane, it is always a pleasure to get to hear your perspective on game design.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for having me here, but also just the opportunity to work with you guys. It's been great. It's been an honor to be put in the Telestrations line. It's a great game. I've had a copy for forever, so I don't know if I'm going to shave it into my head, but
that gorgeous lock, I wouldn't, man.
No, don't do it. Don't do it.
I look forward to all being together again so we can play some games and laugh together.
It'll be great.
For sure.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Thank you.